Good morning, my dear students. Today we are going to do a poem that all of you will love, enjoy, and relish. For one reason, the poem itself is so sweet and lovely. Secondly, the poem is written by our great national poet Kuvempu, known to all of us, respected and nearly adored by almost all of us. So to study a poem written by such a great poet who is so revered itself is rewarding and enjoyable. The name of the poem is so interesting. Heaven, if you are not here on earth, where else you could be? So the poem is a sonnet that is written in 14 lines. When we hear of sonnet in English language, suddenly one appears before us is the great William Shakespeare, known for his great sonnets. Here, Kuvempu is writing sonnet. The order of Shakespeare is reversed. Shakespeare also writes sonnet in 3 quatrains and concludes it with a couplet. Whereas Kuvempu begins the poem with the couplet, that is 2 lines, then goes on explaining what he wants us to accept in the following 3 quatrains. Now, we do this poem. Before entering into the exact lines of the poem, it is better that we think of the background of the poem. God, heaven, and nymphs are the concepts that have haunted mankind from the very beginning. Irrespective of the language, irrespective of the land, these 3 concepts, irrespective of the culture, irrespective of civilization, these 3 concepts have been common to mankind as such, and mankind has been haunted with these thoughts. God, we haven't seen him. Heaven, we haven't gone there. Nymphs, the God's messengers, haven't come to us. But these 3 concepts are so strong in our mind, majority of human beings cannot live without entertaining these concepts. And for the sake of God, how many have left all the comforts and pleasures and joys and happiness of this earth with that sole omega point of finding God? They leave out the family, the happiness, the comforts, the food, friendship, everything they reject for that one omega point just to find God. The best example for this concept hunters are our own rishis. See what a torturous life they have undergone, doing tapas, almost fasting throughout life, spending time in prayer and meditation, drinking water from the rivulet, eating fruits or roots available in the forest. They have sacrificed everything. What was ultimate? To make the human soul perfect so as to reach Paramatma. How the rishis spent the time in caves near the Himalayas, that biting, freezing cold. They don't mind. For them, that one aim to meet God, to reach heaven, where Atma would join Paramatma, that they call Swarga, heaven. So heaven is the place where human soul and the divine meet. That then it is bliss forever. Now, Kumbhu is asking, he is not asking directly, but indirectly he is referring to who has seen this God. We haven't seen God, but we make our own gods. Maybe a little too much for PUC students. We make our gods. We have the concept of God. We carve the images of gods and goddesses according to our whims and fancies without knowing how really those gods or goddesses look. The poet is wondering, why should mankind forego all the gifts of nature or the happiness nature has bestowed on him just in search of a concept for which he is not sure. Just to begin the poem, the first heaven, the poet is addressing, apostrophizing. In poetry, apostrophizing is a figure of speech where we address something or someone who is not before us as if they are before us and listening to us. We don't see heaven. Heaven is not before us, but poet is addressing heaven. That is the concept the people have been, mankind has been engaged with. The concept the mankind was following, maybe without reaching it. Heaven, and poet is indirectly giving the answer, if you are not here on earth. So according to the concept of rishis and others, heaven is a far away place beyond the stars, that is the abode of God, that we call heaven. That is again a concept. The poet is asking, oh heaven, that many of us think beyond the stars, if you are not here on this earth, where else could you be? Poet is emphatic in the statement. Poet is concluding the couplet with an exclamation, that is some kind of surprise how people fail to understand this clear concept. Heaven, if you are not here on this earth, where else could you be? That is, poet is asserting, if I put it in the prose order, heaven, you are here and here only. If you are not here, you are not anywhere else. After this emphatic statement, which begins the poem, the poet goes on to explain his stand in the following quatrains. The first one, if we ourselves cannot be gods, then there can be no gods. If we ourselves are in heavenly nymphs, the nymphs are not elsewhere. The first two lines of the first quatrain, the poet is strongly making the statement, human beings are the real gods. How do you go in search of God, neglecting the fellow human being who stands in front of you. So, you are not able to accept, appreciate, adore God in your fellow human being, but you are prepared to do the same for someone whom you will never see. So, for you, a concept is more important than a reality. Poet is asking, if we ourselves, we means the human beings, cannot be gods, then there can be no gods. So he is, as a patriarch, he is asking his fellow human beings, dear friends, if you are not gods, I tell you very firmly that you won't find God anywhere. That is, the real gods are the living human beings in flesh and blood. Living God is not a concept. Now next, if we ourselves are in heavenly nymphs, the nymphs are not elsewhere. So nymphs means the messengers of God. In legends, we read, we study, God sends his messengers to mankind to teach them, to warn them, to guide them, to lead them. But again, that is in the legends. Have you seen a nymph who has come directly from God to talk to you? Has any nymph any time come and tap your shoulder just to get your attention, to pass on the message that God has entrusted him with? No. Poet is equally strong in affirming human beings are the real nymphs. So both gods and God's messengers are these human beings. The God, the divinity in humanity. So wonderful a theme, the divinity in humanity. If we fail to understand, how do we find a divinity that is devoid of any form, any substance? So we have studied for you, I don't want to disturb you too much, in Greek mythology, how gods play roles side with the humans. Even in our own epics we find how gods take sides, joins group of human beings. Poet is not convinced of all this. Your fellow human being is the God for you. Now, and see the first couplet, poet is telling, this earth is the real heaven. First two lines of the first quatrain, the poet is telling, fellow human beings are the real gods. The last two lines of the first quatrain, the poet is asserting vehemently, fellow human beings are the nymphs. That comes naturally. If man is God, man's messengers are the nymphs. Now, the poet is continuing, while this roaring stream rushes fast, rolling surf at the edge of waves, the tender sunshine leans on verdant gardens, and then the gentle sun make this earth heaven. In the couplet, poet asserted so strongly that this earth is the real heaven, and he marked it with exclamation because he is so surprised how fellow human beings are not able to accept the reality that is in front of their eyes. Now in the second quatrain, the poet is elaborating what he has brought out in the couplet. Now, in this stanza, Kumbu turns a nature poet, like Wordsworth in the West, and our own great poet Tagore. Kumbu too becomes a nature poet here, worshipful attitude towards nature. What he says, while this roaring stream rushes fast, roaring. This stanza brings the nature, the complete nature in all her fullness before our mind. The roaring stream. The very word roar brings before our mind the king of animals, the lion, whose roaring shadows the wild. That power, roaring, brings out the power. The roaring stream, when the stream is full, flowing very fast, it makes a kind of roaring sound. Not God roaring from heaven, but roaring of this nature. We will find students here often go to the KRS. When the water is let to flow fast, what a roaring sound we hear. We don't feel to take our eyes from that side. It is a festive look for our eyes and feast for our ears to hear that roaring sound. Majesty of nature, majesty. Poet is addressing the roaring stream. Rushes fast, rushes means flowing very fast. Water always flows downwards. When the volume of water is so much that it fills the stream, the flow would be very, very fast with the roaring sound. Rolling surf at the edge of the waves. So beautiful sight, so beautiful. Hope you might have been to seashore at least once in your life. Go to the seashore, stand on the shore, look into the wild expanse of the sea. You will find the sea never quiet. The sea would be always roaring with waves. How the children enjoy looking at the rising waves on the sea. When the waves rise, at the edge of the wave, foam is formed. Poet is calling the lace. Surf is the lace. That is the foam. The foam that is formed at the edge of the waves. The poet is asking us to look at that. How naturally it is formed. No one is there to make it. Naturally it is formed. The waves rise and rise, finally lash on the shore and recedes with a hissing sound, leaving all the pebbles behind, and what a beautiful sound to listen, the pebbles exploding. Poet is telling, what is the majesty of that? The majestic expanse of the sea. Always like the crown on the water, the rising waves, laced with the foams, dashing the shore, receding back to the sea with the hissing sound. How beautiful it is. Then, heaven lies, roaring surf at edge of waves, the tender sunshine leans on verdant gardens. In another majestic sight, the tender sunshine means early morning sunbeams and sunshine. So, early morning the sun rises, there is sudden and thorough change in nature. the rising of the sun. The sun, many of us worship as God, the giver of life, the giver of light, the giver of heat. And we pray to God. Many perform Surya Namaskara at the rise of the sun, adoring the sun. When that sun looks at us, that is the rays of the sun falling on the tender green leaves of the trees, tree branches, the forest, there comes a kind of shining. And that shining, when the early morning pleasant sunbeams kissing the leaves, that beauty of the shining leaves, no painter can ever paint. Nature's gift. Sunshine leans on verdant gardens, I don't say greenery, and then the gentle sun. See, what is the duty performed by the sun? Then the gentle sun. Why gentle sun? Early morning the sun is so pleasing and pleasant. So it is gentle. And this sun transforms this earth into heaven according to the poet. Again, the most beautiful sight in nature at the sunrise, when the sunbeams kissing the leaves, making them shine, as kind of blushing of the leaves at the kiss of the sunbeams, make this earth heaven according to the poet. Poet says no substitute for this beauty. The sun-warmed earth is the real heaven according to the poet. My dear students, we stop it here. We will resume the remaining part in our next session. Thank you.